Alrighty, everyone. So here we are with our pictures. We have the feet here, and then we'll do hands, and then we'll do face. I love this picture of the face. So intense, the eyes. And then the ears. So let's draw our urinary reflexes on the feet first. First thing that we need to do is make sure that we understand our guidelines. So we have shoulder line, right as the toes meet the ball of the foot. Then we have the diaphragm line, right underneath the ball of the foot. And then we have our proximal head of the fifth metatarsal, which comes across for our waistline. And then we have the pelvic line guideline, which is technically at the base of the cuboid notch and kind of curves around that heel area. And that's going to be really important for us for these reflexes because the urinary system is in horizontal zone 4, but then also we're going to be getting into horizontal zone 3 territory too. Okay, so first and foremost, we have kidneys. So kidneys are going to be half above and half below the waistline guideline. And it depends on the person that you're working on, but they'll normally be somewhere in line with the third toe. Okay, it just looks like a little bean shape. Boop. Color that in, make it all nice and pretty. Don't want to fudge up my marker by coloring yellow on gray. That's a terrible bean shape, but you get the point. So we have our kidney reflexes, but then what I like to do is I like to draw bladder first and then connect them with the ureters. So we have the bladder reflex, which is technically still in horizontal zone 4, but since it's so midline, we draw half on each foot. But it's right in what would be the plantar surface of those low back reflexes, just above that pelvic guideline. And then now that we know where we're kind of connecting to, we can draw the ureters. Some books have them going up and down. Other books have them kind of going down and around, okay? Either one is perfectly fine. I personally don't care. When I see urinary dysfunction in the reflexes, I normally see it bladder, kidneys, and I really don't do a lot of ureter work. And then same thing with urethra, like if somebody has a urethra issue, it's normally coming from the bigger, more prominent urinary system organ, so it's not like we would draw the urethra like that, okay? So that is how we map the urinary system on the feet. Let's move to the hands. Boop. And hands are more horizontally inclined, so we got to switch around a little bit. Okay, now for those of you that aren't familiar with hand reflexology, we do have a little bit of a sticking point here because the hands are laterally rotated as opposed to where they would show up in a reflexology map, which would be, you know, thumbs together, just like big toes together. So we're going to do these same guidelines, but it's going to be a little bit confusing because we're actually going to map the urinary system going more laterally because that's just anatomical position with the hands. Okay, so let's do our boop, shoulder line guideline, our diaphragm guideline, then proximal head of the fifth metacarpal for our waistline guideline, and then you can't really see it, but we have in between the proximal and distal carpal row for our pelvic line guideline. Okay, so those are our guidelines, but now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. So we'll start with the kidneys. Kidneys are a little bit easier. So they're right smack dab in the center of the thenar eminence. And this is something that I tell clients all the time is if they're having, you know, thenar trouble, it could be because of low back or kidney dehydration issues. Okay, so there is our kidney reflex. Sometimes it's a little bit higher just depending on the map that you're looking at. Again, the map is the guide, not the actual terrain. Okay, and Now we get to work with bladder. So bladder is medial in horizontal zone 4 right at the base. Now, some of you might be freaking out because we're not going midline because we have vertical zone 5 at the 5th digit and then vertical zone 1, the midline, but we're medially rotated again. So we need to draw the bladder in line with vertical zone 1 right at that spinal reflex. So we draw it there. And then we can draw our ureters to connect. Okay, so that is how we would draw the urinary system reflexes on the hands. And now the face gets really fun because we have, oh, I just love this picture. Her eyes are so intense. Now we get to map the face, and it's going to be a little bit congested as we go through that horizontal zone 4. So I'm not going to draw a complete guideline. I'm going to dash it just so that you all can see. So first and foremost, we have our shoulder line guideline. Just give her a big old unibrow like that. Then we have the diaphragm guideline at the zygomatic bone. Make her a raccoon. Then we have the lip line guideline for the waist. Make her a little Joker-esque. And now we have the pelvic line guideline, which you can see actually on this picture. She has a really nice chin crease, and that's what we go for. So I just wanted to dot that, not give it a full line, so that you guys can really see the color. And we would just extend that to the jaw, which is hard to see when you're looking at a 2D image like this. Okay, so let's start with kidneys. So kidneys are actually on either side of the lips. Okay. Really cool story. I actually had a friend growing up that had terrible acne and was taking a medication that was drying out the skin. And what I noticed every time that I would see them is that they'd have these patches on either side of the mouth. And I didn't understand what they were. And now that I've learned to draw the kidneys here, it makes total sense because their medication was drying them out. So it's a cool little story, I find. Okay, so now we have a little bit of an issue because technically we have the uterus prostate reflex right over the bladder. In the face, there's not a lot of leeway as opposed to the feet, the hands, the ears, which are mapped separately. The face is very much all in that same area, especially when we think anatomically of the uterus, prostate, and the bladder being so connected. It can be a little bit difficult to see them distinguished on the map. So what I will do, and what I did on my map, is I actually drew the uterus and ovaries and testes in the center and then just put the bladder as a big old ring around it. And then the uterus prostate would be a small circle inside that and two little circles and pipes for the ovary testes and fallopian tubes vas deferens. And then we draw our ureters. So this is really important to understand with the face and the urinary system, because if people have acne outbreaks throughout this lower section, that's really a lot of urinary territory. It means that their body is trying to flush a lot of toxins, which could be hormones, especially in young children. If they have that hormone dysfunction in through here, it could be that they're not drinking enough water, their body is overproducing growth hormones, and can't flush them out quick enough. So really paying attention to anybody who has dysfunction along this lower section. Very, very prominent when somebody has a UTI or reproductive hormone issues in this area. Okay. Now, last but not least, we have our ears. Let's guideline it up. So, horizontal zone 1, we have the triangular fossa, which gives us our horizontal zone 1 space. I'll just highlight that. I picked these ears because you can really see the shadowing nicely, but just wanted to point that out. So we have horizontal zone 1, and then horizontal zone 2 at the diaphragm guideline creates the base of that triangular fossa. Okay, then we have our waistline guideline kind of drawn for us right here at the base of what's known as the Cymboconcha, or lesser cave. And then the earlobe is really easy for the pelvic guideline. People's ears are going to be different shapes, so just recognize your major landmarks and you should be fine. Okay. Now the kidneys are absolutely beautiful in the ears because they're tucked right in this little alcove in between. The yellow's not really showing up on this picture. Let's change color. Let's go into an orange. There we go. Okay. So it's right in this base cave, right on the outside. It's tucked right in there. You'll see this red patch or this dry patch right in that area. It's absolutely fascinating to see. Ooh, made that one a little bit bigger, but that's okay. Okay. So now we have the bladder, and the bladder is right in the base of that auditory canal. And just like the face, you have anybody with chronic ear infections, especially deep into that ear, you see a lot of redness, dehydration, irritation in the auditory opening. That's really, really important core, lower digestive, reproductive, and urinary space. And then the ureters can almost just flow right into there along the edge, along that antitragus. Okay? And that is how we would map the ears. But again, pay attention, because that's something that I see a lot, especially when somebody comes in for the first time and they turn to the side and I get that quick view of the inner ear. When I see that, first recommendation is always water, just if they have any kind of cracking red dryness in there. So that is how we map the urinary system on the feet, hands, face, and ears.